Alright, so it's time for my Sony E3 2017 review. I'll have to say that just overall wasn't very impressed. This isn't going to be as long as my Microsoft rambling video, but the thing is, like, Sony wasn't really sitting on as much, like, they weren't betting on as much as Microsoft was. Microsoft needed an amazing E3 because they've been falling behind this generation and they needed to knock us out of the park, and they didn't. Their showings weren't really that good. They showed either re-released PC games on console or games that were multiplats. They didn't really show any reason to like buy their system other than the Xbox One X's resolution and graphics capabilities. And the funny thing about that is, in the PlayStation 4, the Sony E3 2017 pre-show, before the actual presentation, Sony was talking about the PS4 Pro in a way that actually better described higher resolution, higher graphic games and the benefits of better graphics than Microsoft did when they showed off the Xbox One X. Don't believe me? Watch the freaking pre-show for E3 2017 for Sony, and just watch the PS4 Pro segments. It's hilarious. Like, that was their response to the Xbox One X. They saw it announced, and Microsoft pretty much just, you know, they said what it could do, and then showed off their games. And Sony actually went into detail describing the PS4 Pro. So I'll actually have to give them that. I'm fairly impressed that they actually managed to describe high-resolution gaming better than what Microsoft did. And you know what? This is the point I was trying to make. I've been making this point so much, but I've been basically making this point so much, but it all depends on marketing. If Sony keeps going out like this about the PS4 Pro, then what people, the average consumer, are going to see, the average consumer is going to see, hey, look, this system does all the same stuff that this one does, but this one's way cheaper. Now, Sony did not announce a price drop yet, if at all. They did not announce any sort of price drop or anything for the PlayStation 4 Pro. It's still $400, but I think when they realized that the One X is still $100 more, they probably weren't too concerned. But yeah, Microsoft's got to pick up on that, because right now, just based on what I've been seeing, the average consumer is not going to be seeing the difference. They're just going to be seeing the price difference, and the fact that the PlayStation 4 still has more games. Now, just because the PS4 has more games doesn't mean that this conference was good. The games they showed off, if they hadn't shown off these games before, this would have been a fine conference. If they hadn't shown off Detroit before, if they hadn't shown off the Uncharted DLC, if they had not shown off... See, I can't even freaking remember anything, like, because I was just bored to tears in this whole conference. It wasn't that... It was just boring, despite what they showed off. Spider-Man, if that was not shown off before at the... when the PS4 Pro was announced that same conference, or was it even before that? I'm not totally sure. If those games weren't shown off before this E3, this would have been an amazing E3 for Sony, and they would have swept the competition. At least so far, we haven't seen Nintendo and what they're offering yet. They would have done an amazing job in this conference had they not shown these games off before. But these are almost all of the games we saw were things that we've seen already. These aren't new to this E3, and they're also coming out after this year. I don't remember seeing any major holiday titles for Sony this year. I didn't see any game that was supposed to be the holiday title. Looks to me like they're going to be relying on multiplats, which, to be fair, that's what Microsoft basically is relying on overall for the Xbox. I actually am linking in the description to a video Black Bond made, basically describing Xbox's situation better than I ever could. And I want you guys to watch that so you can kind of see what I mean, because he put it into words much better than I could. But basically what we got from Microsoft was pretty much all re-released PC games coming to the Xbox One, or games we've seen so far, or multiplats. Sony has shown us all games that we've already seen, except for maybe a few things like The Last of Us... Not The Last of Us. They didn't show The Last of Us 2, which is ridiculous. The Last of Us 2 and Death Stranding should have at least been there if they were showing off games we've already seen or heard of so far. But they did show off a Shadow of the Colossus remake, which I thought was awesome. You know, that game's already been remastered for PS3, and I was really hoping it would be like a different game in the series, but You know something? This will be a lot of people's first introduction to that game, and that game's just a pure work of art. So I'll definitely say that was a good thing for this conference. Overall, I'd say this conference was also just good. If you look at the big picture, you know, compared to Microsoft, Sony, like I said, was not betting on the future of their system from the C3. They already know they have this console generation in the bag. They know the One X is not a threat to the PS4's momentum, so they basically did not go really all out at the C3, and the conference just ended up being boring. It had technical issues on Twitch, expected at E3, and all the games they showed off were things that I really do think that they're waiting for the PlayStation experience to actually announce some new games. I mean, they did it last year, too, but this E3 was far more boring. Basically, I'm looking forward to what Nintendo's doing tomorrow, but you know, today I was just bored to tears by Sony, and as much as I'm looking forward to a lot of these games that they showed off, I can't say that I would rate this conference any more than just good. And Microsoft's was announced as good too, and I have major criticisms for both of them. Microsoft's show was actually more interesting in terms of, if you just look at it as a boxed-in thing, and you don't look at the big picture, Microsoft's show was definitively better. It was presented better. As I said, there was no awkwardness. The games they showed off were more interesting, even if they weren't necessarily new and they weren't necessarily exclusive. But their show was just better. Sony, on the other hand, showed off a larger number of actual exclusive games that will get people to want to buy a PlayStation 4 if they haven't already. So as the big picture, Sony's still going to be doing better than Microsoft. But for the show, I'd say that Sony did worse than Microsoft. No doubt about that. I didn't live tweet this event as much as I did the Microsoft event, but you can again look through my Twitter to kind of see what my thoughts were throughout it. Not as much shit talking, but again, the reason I talked so much shit for Microsoft was because of the fact that they were betting on so much for the conference, and they didn't prove us wrong for all the stuff that, like, we were criticizing them for. And Sony was just neutral. It was boring, and I can't say that I was very impressed. Now, all we have left, at least the one that I care about the most, is we have Nintendo going on tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to watch that one live or live tweet it like I did Sony and Microsoft because I'm going to be at work and it's happening in the morning. I'm going to completely avoid social media for the day. I'm not going to be on social media because I'm going to get home, watch Nintendo's conference, and then make my own thoughts video on it. All Nintendo needs to do is show off Retro Studios' project, show off a new Metroid, something amazing, and they win E3. Again, pretty much the only E3 Nintendo hasn't won in recent years was 2015, where it was just like Sony just did now. It was all games we've already seen. Although the difference with Nintendo there is that their games weren't as interesting as what Sony was showing off this year. So E3 2015 for Nintendo was even worse than E3 2017 for Sony. But and you know something though? Now that we got Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle shown off at Ubisoft's conference, that means that Nintendo has tons of room in their conference now in 25 minutes to just rapid-fire games. If they don't fluff it up with stupid crap and they just announce games, then we're looking at a good conference. I expect to see Xenoblade's release date, Mario Odyssey, we're going to get a good big focus on that, and we should see some new games. If Nintendo just focuses on Mario Odyssey, though, which is something we've already seen, they still have the potential of being more interesting and more fun than the other conferences, but it still wouldn't be enough, and that would leave this as the most disappointing E3 in recent years, because of all of the big three just being very meh. So if Nintendo knocks it out of the park, they'll be the saviors of E3. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.